What's the most embarrassing thing you've seen happen in class? It was the beginning of senior year, and we were all getting to know our new chemistry teacher, Mrs. Williams. She was kind of a legend at our school. Everyone talked about how she was incredibly strict, but also a genius when it came to the subject. Nobody dared mess around in her class because we all knew that the moment you slipped up, you'd regret it, but of course, I had to find out the hard way. One day, we were working on a really complicated experiment involving some chemicals that were known to cause a reaction when combined. The instructions were very clear. Don't mix these substances until you're absolutely sure you have the right measurements. Mrs. Williams had emphasized it more times than I could count. Now this is where things get interesting. My classmate Jake was always the class clown, the type who would do anything to make people laugh, even if it meant embarrassing himself in front of everyone. As we were setting up our experiment, I noticed Jake in the corner giving me one of his trademark grins. He was already looking at a random set of chemicals that he had no business touching. "Hey, what do you think will happen if I mix these two?" he whispered, holding up 2 bottles of chemicals. I looked at the bottles. One was labeled sodium hydroxide and the other hydrochloric acid. I froze. Those 2 chemicals were dangerous when mixed, and they could cause an explosion. Mrs. Williams had warned us about them just last week. "Jake, don't even think about it," I said, but he was already getting too excited. "Come on, it'll be fine, you're just scared. Watch this," he replied with a wink, pouring the chemicals into a glass beaker. I felt my heart drop. I wasn't sure whether I should shout for Mrs. Williams or just let Jake learn the hard way, but before I could react, the beaker started fizzing violently. I swear it looked like something straight out of a science fiction movie. "Jake, get away from it," I screamed, but it was too late. The beaker exploded in a burst of foam, shooting the chemical mixture all over the table. The foam started to spill over, and some of it splashed onto Jake's shirt and his hands. He jumped back, his eyes wide with panic. Mrs. Williams turned around just in time to see the chaos unfold, her face going from shock to complete and utter rage. In one swift motion, she grabbed the fire extinguisher and doused the area with it, making sure to cool down the chemicals. "Jacob," she yelled, her voice booming across the entire room. Everyone went silent as Jake stood there looking like a deer caught in headlights, his shirt covered in foam and his hands a mess. He didn't even try to make an excuse, he just stood there, red-faced, as Mrs. Williams walked over shaking her head. "You do realize you almost caused a huge disaster, right?" she asked, the anger evident in her tone. I didn't mean to," Jake stammered, clearly embarrassed. "You didn't mean to?" she said. "Did you even think for 1 second about the consequences of your actions? Chemistry isn't a joke, Jacob. People could have gotten hurt." Mrs. Williams's lecture continued for what felt like an eternity. Meanwhile, the rest of the class couldn't help but snicker under their breath. It wasn't that we were happy Jake had messed up, but the way he stood there completely embarrassed was too much to ignore. Finally, Mrs. Williams gave him one last look before turning her attention to the class. "Jake will be cleaning up this mess for the rest of the period," she said firmly, making sure everyone heard it loud and clear. We spent the next few minutes cleaning up, and Jake didn't say a word. He was too humiliated to speak. But as we all worked together to scrub down the lab, it became clear that everyone was secretly relieved that it wasn't any worse. As for Jake, he learned the hard way that messing with chemistry could have real consequences. The next time I saw him trying to do something reckless, I made sure to remind him of the explosion incident. I'll never forget the look on his face when he realized how close he'd come to something much worse.